Welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast, the podcast that gives you immediate actions you can take to start seeing life-shifting results now. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast. This is Mark Cardone.
And Theron fight.
We're back in our Refocus to Rise series. I don't even remember what number we're on, but we're talking about is this number 5?
Number 5.
And
Yep.
we're talking about relationships today, which, it's funny when we talk about relationships and building deeper relationships specifically. So many people, when they get to, these milestones like the end of the year or those times when we're setting goals, we focus so much on our career. We
Yep.
focus so much on our fitness and our health, but, we focus on our money management. But a lot of times we just leave out how we're going to build better relationships and deeper connections going forward.
Something I heard years ago that I really believe it to be true because I lived through it, is largely your level of happiness is going to be based on how your closest relationships are going in your life. And if you think about that, it's almost like common sense.
Uh-huh.
But especially if you're an achiever and you're going, like you said, you focus on this, focus on that, and you kind of forget. You certainly take people for granted that are close to you. They're always going to be there, and that's when you can run into trouble.
Yeah,
And
and
yeah, go ahead.
even worse than taking them for granted. I think a lot of times people see them as a nuisance.
Oh,
Like
that's even worse. Yeah,
which is
right.
nobody listening to this podcast, obviously, but
No.
I know, I remember building a company with young kids. There were those times when you would say, "Oh man, like, I really have to focus on this thing," but the kids need me, or and you hear it in a lot of other parts of our goal setting where, people say, "Well, I can't do this because of my
Yeah.
kids, or because of my
Yeah.
spouse, or because of," and we place blame on those relationships. So I think this podcast is so important because, like you said, I mean, relationships, the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the quality of your relationships.
Yeah, and I think it's important that the people that you're closest with, we're really working on improving those and getting those better and deepening the relationships, um, and not taking them for granted. I think what you brought up with kids, luckily, I was pretty good at that. That if they needed me, I was there. I remember holding my babies and typing. This was before you could
Hmm.
talk to type or anything. So I was working with them as I'm kind of holding them without, because I had to get stuff done, but I also wanted to be close to them and I wanted to make sure I'm holding them and being near. So I remember doing those things. And anytime that I was working at home and they come up to me, ask me a question, I made sure that I stopped and listened to them, because now, and you have your kids are getting older, and my kids are adults. What would you give to have that your little girl
Oh,
come up to you and give you a hug? That doesn't
crazy.
happen very often anymore. I remember talking to a friend years ago. We're about in the same stage, and he goes, "I didn't know the last time I picked up my son would be the last time I picked up my son."
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. There is a last
Hmm.
time you're going to pick up your kid, and you never know when that is. It just
Yeah.
happens. And you look back a year, 2 years since it happened, you're like, oh my goodness. And so these are the little things that we have to keep in mind as we're achieving, because really, why do you do what you do? I was about 12 years into my career before I had my first child. And so, I was really working, focused on success and all of this. Um, After kids, it made me more successful because I was working for somebody else, another reason other than just me.
Yeah.
So I think these relationships aren't just for happiness and for peace of mind, but also they could actually make you more successful because you're working towards something that's more than you're just yourself.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, we're going to talk about personal relationships, which are important, but also, and people out there who are, in business and sales and things like that. I mean, I think there's a level of relationships where we move from that transaction minded, relationship to those actual connected relationships. And,
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
in my business, and I know at the dojo, and I know all over the place, like those relationships with the people that we're most connected with, those deep
Hmm.
relationships, not just the ones that, are there for the payments, but the ones where you do the
Right.
actual, like
Yeah.
you're there, together in the journey.
Right.
Like those are the best relationships, and those are what make business rewarding on a whole nother level, like
Right.
outside of the finances of business. So, I think there's just lots of jam-packed good stuff in this episode.
Yep, for sure. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. And so the first one, our first focus, our first step, if you will, is practicing the 15 minutes focus block. Okay. And what this is about is, and it doesn't have to be exactly 15 minutes. We just put that time in, especially if you're busy. Sometimes that might be all you have during your busy day. But take your time, and there's three main things that we talk about in here. The first one I'm going to talk about is make sure there's no tech. In other words, put your phone down. Really focus on just the relationship. I know when we go out to dinner, one of the things and the rules we've had for many years since phones got just all over the place is let's put our phone away at dinner. Unless we're waiting for something important, there's something happening. All of that can wait that 45 minutes or hour that we're at dinner. And if you can do that for that 15 minutes or the 20 minutes or whatever you're allocating throughout your day to get that relationship closer, do it.
Yeah, no, I think that's good, and I think part of that is also asking expanding questions, so not just saying, hey, how was your day? Good, and then moving on, but
Yeah.
asking things, that bring out those positive things from people's days. Did anything exciting happen? Anything funny happen? What happened, at work today? Anything good for like, but there's lots of questions you can ask other than just kind of that passing, like, how was your day? But
Yeah.
ask those expanding and longer questions so that you can build conversations out of it.
Yeah, and just to build on that a little bit, you don't want to do it as an interrogation, and
Mm,
you don't even want it as an interview because, let's say it's your spouse, you don't want to be interviewing or interrogating your spouse.
yeah,
Make it natural, but just think ahead of time. Think if you're heading to see your spouse and you're having a quick lunch or coffee together, just think of what are a couple things you'd like to know from, let's say, the day before. So, I mean, simply asking, "Hey, how'd that go with this?" It could be about their work or could be about something else. But like you said, it's not just a general "How was your day?" How's your day going? I mean, that's something you say to somebody that's waiting on you. You know what I
yeah,
mean? At the coffee shop. Hey, how's your
yeah.
day going? So I think with deeper relationships, we need to have a little deeper questions.
Yeah, I love the thought of like asking about something they told you the day before that they were
Ooh,
doing
and if
that
you're
day.
right,
Because man, if
yeah,
you remember like that, talk about somebody feeling like like they're important, remembering that stuff. Like,
yeah.
when your spouse tells you that they have an important thing going on at work the next day, and then at the end of the day saying, "Hey, how did that thing you told me about
Yeah,
yesterday go?" It
yeah,
really makes them feel like you're listening, and I think that's cool.
yeah, yeah. And the last one is try to focus, if not solely on them, mostly on them. Now, the caveat is if you have kids and you're talking to your spouse, a large part of your interaction, especially if your kids are still at home, is going to be talking about your kids, right? But also, it's important that you do put in there, how are you doing? What's going on? And like you said, with the questions. But instead of focusing on you, focusing on them. I mean, this is really where I think this tip is a little bit more specific.
Yeah,
That you're focusing on them, not I had such a horrible day, and you're just unloading on your partner. I don't know if that, not that you can't do that, and not that it doesn't happen sometimes, and not that that's not important to do, but that shouldn't be the basis of this,
yeah.
right? It really should be about deepening that relationship.
And I like this from a business setting, because I think it's, you get lost sometimes when you're talking to, people you work with, people that,
Yeah,
customers and things like that, where you say, hey, how are things? And they immediately kind of answer with the business answer, like, oh, things are busy,
yeah,
or, this is what's going on at work or things
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Sometimes it's nice
Hmm.
just to say, yeah, but like, how are you doing? Like
Yeah,
like, how's home? How's things?
yeah,
How's
yeah.
hobbies? Like, but learn,
Hmm.
just taking that genuine interest and focusing on other people, I think is
Right.
great.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So now step number two. So this one is, we call it the feedback framing, the soft start. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could talk about this, but the whole idea is, how you set up your questions are going to get a better response. And we know this is pretty much sales 101. And not that we want to manipulate our partner or our person that we're talking about, but how you frame a question is going to get a different result.
Yeah.
So if you're doing like observation, I noticed that this, and that's a good way of kind of starting a conversation. Or I felt this way. How did you feel about that? That again, this is good, especially if you're talking to the opposite sex. This is good to use the language that they are thinking in mostly. That way, it shows a little bit of understanding. Um, and I think this is way better than just acting like you want to act and
Yeah.
saying what you want to say. As a guy, this is more guy advice. Is we have to make sure that we're softening, and this is something I have to constantly work on, because me at the dojo, I just tell people what to do. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter how I say it; they're just going to do it, right?
Yeah.
Um, at home, I have to remind myself, okay, I'm not the Shihan at home, and I have to soften what I say, how I say it, etc. So this tip is as much for me as it is for anybody else.
Well, it's funny. I love this stuff because we talked about it being called feedback framing, the soft start. I think you could almost name this "How Not to Be Off-Putting."
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
really, like I think there's things people do just kind of by nature, by comfort level with people, that especially when we're in deeper relationships with people, we tend to have that familiarity. So saying things like those you statements, like you
yeah,
always do this, or you need to stop doing that, or like those things that are real pointy, they just don't have the effect, and you would never say them to somebody that you weren't kind of that you were in a newer relationship with,
right.
right?
Yep,
Like you never say, oh, you never do this, or you're bad at this, or there's just better ways to frame the way you do that. And I think what you said, using like I noticed, hey, I feel, or however those things are, just work better.
yep. And again, expanding on what you said is also you're accusing them of always doing something, right? And
Hmm.
that's not the case. Anthony Robbins, way back 30 years ago, his big thing was really stop using always and never,
Yeah.
those two words, because very rarely are they true, especially when you're dealing with humans. They don't always do something, or they don't never do it. And when you do that, you're accusing them and you're putting them on the defense.
Yeah.
So that's something. That's why the language is important. I mean, of course, they can go too far with language and all of this, but being careful of what you say, just like in sales, you could really ruin a sales uh, close by just how you frame something. I mean, just one sentence could just put it, and you know this because you do a lot of closing.
Yeah.
And so, same thing with relationship. We have to focus on that. Now, the last tip is focus on the teamwork. And I like this. I use this at the dojo all the time. I mean, when have you heard me say, this is my dojo? This is the way we're doing it. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard me say that. I always say it's our dojo. Now, is it technically mine? Yes. Yes, it is. But I don't look at it that way because I could not do it alone. You guys know that. I say it enough. And I think in a relationship at home, if you have two people raising kids, well, one person raising kids you can do, and I've seen many successful people, whether it's dads or moms raising kids alone. That happens very successfully, right? However, is it easier with two people? Whether they're the same sex or different, I don't care about that. But is two people easier? Yes, because you can hand them off. I know you have two kids, I have two kids, and I know three kids are way harder than just two. One kid is easy. Two kids is tough. Three kids and more, that's a different level. But just speaking from our experience, having two kids, has there been times that you're like, okay, I've had enough. You take over?
Yes.
The answer is, of course, yes.
Uh-huh.
And if you haven't had that, you're lying, because
Right.
of course you have. If you have more than one kid.
Yeah.
So having two people and being a team, it just is better. And so if you're using language with, how can we solve this, or how can we get better, or what do you think? All of that language is way better for the relationship.
It's been a long time since we did a boat analogy. on this
Oh, here we
podcast.
go.
But I remember hearing once that we're all on the relationship together,
Ah,
and we all need, and I think that really speaks to the teamwork of it, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't care, if you're in a family or a business or the dojo or wherever, like the goal is for the thing to move forward, right? And to continue moving and not to sink, right? And I think if you approach, I love approaching relationships from that mindset because it's like whatever the problems are, we have to figure out how we're rowing that way. Like that's the goal. Rowing, is that
You
rowing?
know what? I have to say that was probably your best
Thank you.
analogy for boats that you've done ever. That was impressive.
Thank you.
The relationship. I mean, you had that in there, and then you
Uh-huh.
tied it in, rowing in the same direction. I mean, it was really good.
Yeah.
Well
Thank you.
done.
I
Well done, my
appreciate it.
friend.
Speak
So
so speaking of,
that goes into
let's
this. Yeah, go
as
ahead.
rolls right into this. Number three, the appreciation audits, right? Appreciation is my favorite part of relationships. This is like
Yeah.
really where like I get fired up about when we're talking about building
Hmm.
deeper relationships and getting away from those transactional relationships. But
Right.
it's shifting your focus to notice what's going right in the relationship rather than what's going wrong or what the challenges are. Because
Hmm.
every relationship has challenges. You have two different people. There's going to be conflict. There's going to be challenges, but we can really change our glasses to focus on what's right.
Yep. And just like I did for you, I was specific with why I liked what you said with your boat analogy.
Yeah.
That's what we want to do. We want to be specific. So instead of saying, I like everything you did, thanks for everything, all of those things, we was talking to my instructors, and I know you do this as well with the instructors. Stop saying good. Stop saying good. Good job. That was good. That means nothing. I mean, certainly it's better than saying you suck. Of course, it's better than that, but be specific with it. That was a great kick that you did, Johnny. Or that stance was awesome, Sarah. You know, that being specific in the martial arts, but also being specific when you're showing your appreciation to somebody.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be corny. You don't want to be like over the top. And if you don't do this, you got to start slow. You know, I know my wife is very, very keen on if I'm buttering her up, I gotta start weeks, even months ahead of time. I can't start a day ahead of time buttering her up because she's gonna see it coming, right?
Yeah.
And so the goal is to work towards this, move in that direction, where you're being specific with your praise.
Yeah. I think that's a really good one. And I think it's important to remember that the people that we think know that we appreciate them still
Hmm.
need that.
Yep.
So even the people that that we go, oh, they know that. They know I appreciate them.
Yeah.
They still need this,
Yep.
right?
I agree.
But one of my favorite tips out of this, because I think appreciation is great and you should do the one-on-ones and talk to people. But I think a cool thing you can do is I love using post-it notes.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
that,
you do.
like I know you probably
Yeah.
like I bet half of your post-it note budget is my
Pretty much,
garbage
but
that
that's
I do.
okay.
Um, but I love leaving little notes because
Yeah.
the cool thing about post-it notes is they're sticky. They're not a sponsor, but they're sticky and you can put
Yep.
them wherever, right? So you can
Yep.
write, hey, I really appreciate that you did this or nice job with this or whatever.
Right.
Um, sometimes I'll just put, hey, thanks for being a great wife, and I'll stick it like on the coffee cups inside the cabinet. So when she opens it, she sees it. But like unexpected notes are great. Thank you notes, writing them and actually putting them in the mail. You don't be afraid to go analog a little
Yeah.
bit,
Right.
right? Because text messages are good.
Yep.
Hey, thanks for doing that. Those are
Yep.
those are great. But
Yeah.
there's still something like magical about
Yeah.
getting an analog note.
Agreed. Yep. And anybody that doesn't really know you, they think you're BSing what you just said about your wife and giving her a note. I know 100% that you did it, even without seeing it. That is you. That's
Yeah.
your brand, you know.
Uh-huh.
So it's a great tip. It really,
Yeah.
whether you use a sticky note or just a regular piece of paper, I think either one is fine. But I do like the sticky notes because you're right. I mean, you can use them, you can put it in your car, stick them up, you can put it on your bathroom mirror. You know, there's a lot of uses for it, for
There's
sure.
that action. There's that action to take out of this. If nothing else, go buy sticky notes today.
Right. Yep. All different colors. Pick your size.
All right, well, let's review our
Yeah,
steps. So I think this is good. So we're talking about building deeper relationships for our Refocus Horizon 2026. So number one is our 15-minute focus block. So this is
yep,
about taking, it doesn't have to be 15 minutes, but taking some dedicated tech-free time
right.
to focus on the person that you're with, to ask them questions,
Hmm.
to really show that you're genuinely interested in them.
Number two is implement the feedback framing. So this is showing your appreciation, but also framing anything that you're saying is I noticed this, that would be feeling, or I need to show. All of that helps, along with making sure that you're focused on the teamwork aspect, that you're trying to help each other versus you need to do this and telling them what they have to do, but it's us collectively.
Yeah, and then number three, appreciation audits. So, make sure that we're being specific in our appreciation of people. We're telling them the things that, are right, that they're doing well, that we appreciate them. And, throw some unexpected notes, post-its, paper, write it in the snow on their car if you're up on our direction this time of
Yeah.
year.
Yep.
But leave those little unexpected analog notes. They're cool for people.
Awesome.
And that wraps up this episode of the Achieve Results Now podcast, Refocus to Rise number 5. Make sure you go back and listen to our other episodes, and we will see you on the next show.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening. Hop over to our website at www.achieveresultsnow.com to get your free copy of our book, Ignite Results, 4 specific daily actions to help you achieve results now. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Achieve Results Now. Thanks for listening, commenting, and subscribing. Now get out there and achieve results now.